The Kansas Jayhawks and Lance Leipold travel on the road in an underrated non-conference matchup versus Illinois this week. Let's talk about it and give a prediction. Illinois looked much improved in Game 1 from last season. Now granted, they played Eastern Illinois and won 45-0, so that's not saying a ton, but their offense looked like they were humming a little bit more than they did last year. Like I said, they went 5-7, and I think their head coach, Bret Bielema, is on the hot seat. He's been there now for either 3 or 4 seasons, and if this one is not a winning one, I don't know how much longer he's going to be around as the head coach. But the big question for this Illinois team is, can they stop anyone on defense? They were pretty much middle of the pack last year, but their star defensive tackle, Jer'Zhan Newton, gets drafted this past year, and that leaves a giant hole in the middle of this defense. Can they recover? I'm not so sure, but let's talk about it here in just a minute. The next thing I want to talk about, it's not a question, it's a must. Luke Altmyer, the starting quarterback for the Fighting Illini, has to step up. In 7 Power 4 games last year, he averaged under 200 yards per game passing. He had 10 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. To me, that's unacceptable when you play a starting quarterback in the Power 4. You gotta have him play well in big spots. And when you play a team like Kansas, you have to be mistake-free. Can he do that? I'm not so sure. What I do know, if Illinois wants to win this game, he must be mistake-free. It's a big ask, I get it, but still, that's a requirement for this Illinois team to win this game. Kansas is going to run the football. Let's talk about the Jayhawks for a minute. In their first game, they had 331 rushing yards versus Lindenwood. Again, like Eastern Illinois State or whatever that was, lower FCS opponent, you can't really judge Kansas. But last year, they had a great year, and that was without their starting quarterback, Jalen Daniels, who was back for this team and had a hell of a game last season versus Illinois. 277 yards in the air, 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. He didn't get a ton of looks in his first game, but look out for wide receiver Luke Grimm, a deep threat, somebody that Daniels is going to be airing the ball out to. Let's go ahead and continue to talk about last season's game. Kansas, when they played Illinois, they did play in Kansas, but they had 500 total yards of offense. I think it was somewhere around 262 yards on the ground in 44 rushing attempts and 2 touchdowns. Very impressive stuff, and exactly what Kansas is made of. That left side of the offensive line is extremely elite. To me, it's one of the best in the country, and they're going to take full advantage of that versus Illinois. Let's talk about my prediction. There's a lot to go into here. To me, the coaching difference goes to Lance Leipold. I think he's one of the best in the country. He's going to be getting a lot of big-time offers at the end of this year if it goes well. There is a line of scrimmage difference. I think that Kansas has a better offensive line, and Illinois' offensive line isn't much to write home about. I don't think that Kansas has, by far and away the better defense, but I do think the difference here in this game is that Kansas offensive line, if they get a push on those defensive tackles for Illinois that have to replace such a big hole, I think that Devin Neal, the running back for Kansas, takes full advantage of that and has a field day. Last year, he had over 100 scrimmage yards in this game versus Illinois, and I think at least 1 touchdown, if not 2. I fully expect to see that once again this season. Now, getting into my prediction, I do think that this will be closer early on. Last season, I think Kansas was up like 21-0, 28-7 towards the end of the third quarter, and Illinois kind of made a miracle type comeback there at the end. Kansas won that game 34-23. I expect this game to be a little closer early on, but Kansas will win 31-14. When it comes to looking at that spread, I really like it. It's not going to be in my Pleasant picks, I don't think, but 31-14 is a very comfortable win for this Kansas team on the road against a Power 4 non-conference team. That's going to do it for this episode. Thanks for watching. We got a few more coming out. We'll see you next time.